And welcome to Small Business Chat this morning. We are greeting you here. There are three of us today. Myself, I'd like to say hello to Karen. And we have
Hello.
Hi.
Yasmin Shahin Zafar. Hello. I hope we are absolutely delighted to have you here today to help us talk. We are talking today about education culture versus cancel culture. Now, these are somber times at the moment. I think everyone's feeling a bit sensitive to what is going on in the world. But actually, when we look back, it's been quite divisive. And even though it's been divisive for years and years and decades in terms of contrasting views, conflicting viewpoints. I think we've kind of seen it probably about 2016. We're having these really difficult conversations around the dinner table. Like before, it used to be religion and politics don't discuss. It's just impolite. But actually, when it comes to politics, when it comes to really important issues, if we don't discuss, we're not going to move forward with change. And we are absolutely thrilled to have Yasmin here to help us navigate that conversation about how we can have those difficult conversations. So Yasmin, welcome. We'd love you to introduce yourself and tell us about what you do.
Thank you, Christelle and Karen, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm absolutely over the moon, and I love I've not heard of education culture, the phrase previously, and I think it's such a fantastic heading, education culture versus cancel culture. So congratulations for that and taking that on.
Not mine. I think it's even educate culture, but I just thought there's got to be a different word or an opposing or a contrasting view that's a bit more positive. So yeah, we hope we see more of it. But this discussion,
yeah, I think really a hashtag. It can be the start, and it starts with something very small as well, as always. So if I tell you a little bit about myself, I'm Yasmin. I'm a registered counsellor with the BACP. I work with anger and relationships. I'm also the founder of Let's Stop Shouting Awareness Day. It's actually World Let's Stop Shouting Awareness Day. And it happens every November the 6th. It's an awareness day. Basically, we've got three main objectives. The first one's about just raising awareness of the impact shouting has on our relationships. And, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and say, I have been a shouter, and there's still times I, lose my rag. But then, and it's part of human nature, but also just raising awareness of the physical, not just the mental impact on the relationships, but the physical impact on our body, also stress levels. And let's face it, no one likes losing control or shouting, and no one likes being shouted at. I mean, I've yet to find someone who actually enjoys being shouted at. So that's really our first aim, just to raise awareness, because I feel, I don't know about you guys, but there's also a lot of shame around shouting and losing control and being angry. We're not supposed to. What will the neighbours think? What will people think of us? So it can be quite hidden as well. So that's the first, just getting more people to talk about it and saying, well, yeah, I shout. What can I do about it? How can I not? How does it leave me feeling? How does it impact those closest to me? Does it drive people away from me? And just opening up a gentle, non-judgmental conversation.
I think people have this. We're talking about leaders as well, and you kind of see that what's seen as a strong leader is somebody who's forthright, will be bigger, bolder, louder. And sometimes people will look at someone who's quieter, that is taking a much calmer approach to encourage those conversations, and that's seen as detrimental. Like there's someone seen as you're not strong enough. And strength can be just as quiet and as impactful in your conversation and your comms than it can be just shouting. And like you say, you know, we probably feel like we have to shout to get our points heard, or it's because of stress or something inside of us. I mean, more so now I'm seeing it in terms of fear. Like we have a fear, and you know, again, this is where your experience comes into it. But I mean, there is a deep-rooted fear of why is this triggering this emotion or this reaction for you shouting, and not having a conversation where you could be listening and learning.
And also within the shouting, I don't know, we called it "Let's Stop Shouting," because I don't know if you've experienced this, but I certainly have. You know, you'll be in a conversation and someone will say to you, "Stop shouting," and you'll go, "I'm not shouting," and they'll go, "Yes, you are," and the voices get higher, and before you know it, it erupts into this shouting match, and we often forget what the real issue is, and then it becomes this runaway sort of, you know, turmoil and aggression it can lead to, of what you said and what they said, and the real issue never gets resolved. So you end up with this cycle of just going round in circles almost.
And also,
sorry, I was just going to say, I think a lot of times when it gets to that level, you think I'm not being heard. So you talk louder, and you know what I mean? You're trying to get your point across, and the other person's not agreeing with you. In my experience anyway, it's sort of like you're sort of trying to put your point across, they're trying to put their point across, and so you're both sort of shouting at each other because you both want the other person to agree with your point of view, instead of actually going, well, actually you've got your point of view, I've got mine, let's just agree to disagree, but let's discuss this, let's have a discussion. I think that's what's missing a lot of times, isn't it?
And that brings us really nicely to our second aim, advocating passionate and difficult conversations. So one of our aims is in the spirit of growth, learning, exploration of ideas, and healthy debate. Our aim is to open up conversation, how we can do this without shutting people down, or without discussions resulting in resentment. Because, you know, there is silent shouting as well.
Stonewalling is another thing that when you're shutting people off.
And it can lead to aggression, it can lead to abuse, it can lead to violence. And, you know, there's nothing strong about losing control. One of my favorite phrases, and I don't know how you would receive this, is for people to ask themselves, how do I react when my expectations are not met? And I think that's a really lovely way for us to go, oof, how do I react when I'm saying this and they're not agreeing with me, and my expectations not being met of them agreeing with me? How do I react?
And actually, do you know, that's a really good question to ask yourself. I have, you know, to be brutally honest, I think the way that the world is working right now, we have to find answers. And I think it's become quite apparent, more so as I'm getting older, the sources that you would go to normally are not necessarily the ones that are going to be 100% truthful, for right or for wrong reasons. I don't know. And I'm not even going to try and get into that in my little tiny brain at this time in the morning. But for me, you have to learn, you have to read different sources and sources that you wouldn't want to agree with. That's been a really difficult process for me to get my head round. Listen to people I wouldn't want to listen to normally. And when you said that's a disappointment, it's because of what you think your views might be. And if you're agreeing with them, like, you know, are you disappointed in yourself? You know, are you disappointed in, you know, like however other things are happening? And I just think that disappointment's a really interesting word to pick upon and say, right, how, you know, if your expectations aren't being met, we're sometimes uncovering things that are equally as truthful from sources that we wouldn't normally like. Go down the rabbit hole and read everything, but please be careful. Please look at trusted sources. It's like, I'm still, be careful where these sources are coming from. But equally, I found it really quite interesting that in order to get a different viewpoint, you have to listen to what the reality is to find common ground. And what you had said in terms of disappointment of what that reality is, there's probably another different conversation, but someone that this show or this topic had triggered up, but Daryl Davis was an American R&B and blues musician. If you haven't read this story, it's in the show notes. I've given links to this, Daryl Davis. And after encountering the KKK, he thought, well, you can't just, again, cancel out. You can't just pretend it doesn't happen. So he sought to cure racism in terms of education and break down hate by having those difficult conversations. And in the process, he befriended 200 white supremacists, befriended them, converted them, because he gave them space to have that conversation. Now, you're not going to like what you hear. It's disappointment. And also, you're probably going to have to be faced with truths of, well, actually, when I look at what those trigger events are, that perhaps somebody went down that viewpoint, maybe those events, that's their reality. There is so much in terms of disappointment that perhaps I'm veering off on a tangent here, but I just hear the word disappointment. And it's like, cracky, I feel like we perhaps don't want to listen to those views because we have in our minds what's right, what's wrong. And you have to be prepared to open that discussion because something's not quite right.
Definitely. And I think you've got to as well, you've got to be prepared to say, hold your hands up and say, okay, I was wrong, or I didn't know that, or because a lot of it comes from fear of the unknown, doesn't it? Sort of ignorance and not knowing about, and that, different cultures as well.
And let's not forget, we're open to so much more communication. So we are allowing a lot more different opinions, diverse cultures, diversity into our life. Whereas, I remember life before the internet. We didn't even have a phone line at home until I was about 8 years old. So, you were in that safe bubble of your community. So we need to we've got all these different ways of communication coming in. So we need to have some awareness and be kind to ourselves also, that we're not always going to get it right. Nobody is.
I think as well, you said all these communications, I mean, that's where social media can be a force for good, but it can also be a force for bad, because people who have got a certain opinion, you can find 20,000 other people online on Facebook or something like that that'll agree with your point of view, and you get that backup, don't you? And then they just shut down anyone else within that disagrees with that. And I've seen it happening so much, and I'm just like, such real vitriolic stuff, from Brexit to COVID to when I went vegan. I mean, some of the conversations around that, I saw people from both sides. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't one or the other, it was both sides, that I would just stop going on there, or even involved in conversations, because it just got so hateful and horrible.
I think yeah, and I really hear that, Karen. And I think the really important thing to remember is as well that social media makes it easier for people not to be accountable for, would they say it face to face? I mean, if you said to them, I feel it's imperative we have a face-to-face conversation about this, would they actually say that to you? Probably not. What do you think, Crystal?
Well, Karen and I are both opinionated, so we'd probably most likely say it. We just like to be blunt and just, here we go. But equally, the one good thing I will say is that, you know, whenever I've had this conversation, and I've had really difficult conversations recently where, you know, we've got different viewpoints, because I go in with a willingness to be proven wrong. Like, as in, I want to hear, because I could be wrong. You know, I actually, if anything, I'm like, please, you know, I'm really uncomfortable with my positioning here. You know, usually it's like, well, this is common sense, you know, but when it's something that you're really being challenged on, you know, and I think Karen brings up a really good point. I don't know one argument that actually, when you take it to the extremities of whatever that issue might be, you know, we're seeing this right now. You know, people are doing bad things, you know, on either side. And, you know, you kind of like saw this with, like you say, with Brexit, like is a example, and this is particularly pertinent to the UK. And whenever we see this in terms of, you know, we're red, we're blue, whatever it may be, it's like, well, both sides need a good, like, maternal, metaphoric clip around the head. Don't condone violence, but yeah, do you know what I mean? It's like you feel like you want to mummy them and go, oh, for God's sake, play nicely. But you have to have this. You have to have this conversation, and what I think this is stemming from is that I don't think we can put our heads in the sand anymore, because we notice what I find, like, we can even take this situation now when something like war comes up, or, you know, the question is, how did this happen? Like, how it didn't just happen like that. It happened because of certain things going on in our history, or something that, you know, collaborations are being made or whatever. We have to learn this stuff. We won't like it. And so when you talk about situations at school and how we cancel out history of, well, we won't tell them that the British Empire, like, you know, as you know, wonderful as it is today and what we've done, it's like, well, yeah, that wasn't created in a way that was a moment to be proud of either. But no, let's just forget that. Let's blanch out that history. So I think we've got to have those uncomfortable conversations. And I feel that, if anything, I'd like to have more of it. You know, I think we're talking about, you know, because the alternative is that it spirals out and it does get violent.
Yeah. And that is our third aim. We're promoting non-violent communication. So just by talking about shouting, we're looking at working with a couple of universities this year as part of our campaign to do some research for how often does shouting result in violence or aggression. For example, let's take the police force. You know, a young person being shouted at by someone in authority. How can that impact? How can things escalate from there?
So really interesting, yeah. I think it's just having those. A lot of people shut down. I mean, I've been speaking to people behind the scenes, you know, along a lot of these topics that you sort of are raising, you know, issues and that. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to speak about it on social media, or, you know, I don't want the fallback, you know, and the comeback from that, so I'm just going to keep quiet. And that's their position, definitely, but it just means you're not having that conversation. And I remember, you know, me and a friend of mine way back, and we used to get into really healthy, passionate debates, and people were like, you guys stop arguing. And we're like, no, we're not arguing, you know, and we'd be hugging afterwards. We're just having a passionate debate. And it felt really good to sort of get, you know, to the end where we could understand each other and see each other's viewpoints, and at the end felt very relaxed because you had kind of covered everything that you needed to. So by holding it in as well, I think can be probably quite detrimental, can't it?
And what I'm hearing is also you let it out, also in a sort of, you know, a passionate, almost friendly way, rather than holding it in and resentment building up. And then because that will come out in some way.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Manifests. Yeah, it manifests every time.
And I think it's really important, if we don't develop those skills of being able to manage our emotions. And what we're doing, I think, with cancel culture is putting in a strategy or a coping mechanism to avoid dealing with uncomfortable situations and uncomfortable feelings. Oh, I don't like that. It's triggering me. Let's cancel it. So we're not growing as people then, or developing our skills.
Absolutely. And also, like we talked about leadership beforehand, but having, so, you know, obviously we have business owners, we have small businesses, you know, listening, watching, thinking, oh, okay, how can I be better? You know, like, you know, this is why we've all connected. We're like, we've got to do something better. Like, you know, yes, but we could do it through our work in how we help others, or we could be better places to come and work, whatever it may be. And just by having these conversations, like I remember like some of the PR agencies, you know, that I've seen and I've heard of, it's like bullying, it's how we're communicating, they get stressed, they're shouting, you know, it's not a culture. And I remember, I don't know how I had like the gumption to say it, but somebody was like, I don't understand why everyone's scared of me. And it's like, I was still so young, and I went, because you shout, like it's really scary coming up to you. You're not someone that, and I have no idea how at 21 I told one of the senior directors of this major PR firm that actually you've been a bit of a, you know.
I know. You
can't go down.
He was very quiet, but he knows. You know, it's like, is it bravado that you're shouting? And like, we would watch people go into the office and absolutely he would tear strips off them. And it's like, why would I want to work with you? Like, seriously, I honestly, to this day, do not know how those words came out of my mouth. Like, I just, because I myself was bullied at that agency, you know, in a non-shouty way, but this awful mean way. And I just remember, I think I just had my fill of it at that point, because luckily,
you know, I know I've had the same, and I was probably more like that when I was younger than I am now. I was like, where's that spark? Where's that gone? You know what I mean? I think it's just become a lot more relaxed and kind of complacent, or sort of let things happen, or just avoid it. So not working with those kind of people anymore, which you tend to do when you start your own business. But I did have a client quite a long, many years ago, and you know, he started, I got an email and it was like capital letters and lots of exclamation marks and you know, shouting, and I was like, and I was getting more and more angry, because I was just like, you know, this is, you know, all the various things that were going on, and I was just like, oh, I'm just not going to do it. And then I thought, no, I'm going to say something. So I did, and I emailed back, and I did it in a very diplomatic, nice way, but I just said, please stop shouting, and you're doing it in this way because you know your exclamation marks and your all caps and everything like that, and I can't work like this. And it completely transformed the whole relationship.
And that's fantastic that they were open to that.
Yes.
Because sometimes
they maybe didn't realize they were doing it. Do you know what I mean? They'd been maybe doing it to other people, and no one had actually said anything back, so they just carried on doing it, thinking it was normal, or, you know, so caught up and stressed out themselves, they didn't really realize they were doing it until someone called them out on it.
So, I mean, so true. Maybe, but, you know, like you said, Yasmin, it's like we're day to day, it's stresses, it's frustrations. We probably don't realize how we're reacting, how it impacts others. You have so many resources as well. Can you share what you share and how you can help others?
Yeah, so I will always ask, if you think of the frustration or emotions as a wave and as an energy. So often I'll ask clients, where do you feel it? And if you were to think of something that's irritating you now, you'll probably be able to feel it somewhere. And quite often it's like you need to get it out, that energy. So often verbally, through shouting or microaggressions, or you may internalize it through resentment, or it may be through behavior. So first step would be just to actually acknowledge and to start raising your awareness of when this is happening, because your body actually really does tell you. And I often say, let's talk to it. What does it feel like? What color is it? What texture is this energy? How can you diffuse it without perhaps even just, if you feel it in your chest, just gently. I don't know if you've come across a havening. It's a fantastic technique. It's just, you can do this now. Just, it's a way of self-regulating yourself.
I like that. It's very calming, soothing.
Yeah, you can actually do it to your face also. Some people don't like touching their face or their forehead. And just the first thing is to recognize. So, not put judgment on it that I mustn't do this, just start raising your awareness slowly of, when am I feeling like this? It could be at the traffic lights, it could be because your kids aren't ready on time. As parents, it's stressful. Life is stressful, frustrating. And I would always say, just start slowly, pushing the kids out of the door. Yes, you're in a rush, but, just start noticing your shoulders. They may be hunched. You might have a frown on your face. If you notice it, just smile to yourself and just relax. I mean, I'm always pulling funny faces when I realize that I've got a frown on my face. Does that feel relatable to you folks?
Yeah, I mean, we manifest, like stress. I imagine, like we're sitting down, if you're talking to people, go for a walk if something's stressing you out. You've got a client email that's just come in, go for a walk, don't deal with it just yet, loosen up, whatever it may be. Look at, we talk about calming effects of nature. I think what I quite like is some of the resources as well, is not only identifying it, but also assertive communication and how to deal with that is something that you look at as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. And on the Let's Stop Shouting website, there's some breathe balls that you can download onto your phone, just to play, to regulate your breathing. Assertive communication. Now, this doesn't come naturally to any of us. Most of us aren't taught how to communicate assertively. You can find a worksheet on there of phrases to use. When did you guys first know about assertive communication, just out of interest?
You're right, we're not told, are we? It's
just,
no. I think there's something about empathy, though. Like, when I think about it, the way that I was brought up, my mum's a very empathetic communicator. And so I think that that's something, and she's worked in the sort of health sector. And even though she wasn't health related, just the way she would treat people with dignity, respect, she would bring out of them so much more than even their, clinicians, their psychiatrists would. Like, they would just open up to her. And it's a real gift. And when you witness that, and she, like, I was just brought up to have a bit more compassion and understanding of other people. Don't get me wrong, I am not a saint. And if you press my buttons, like I have been, like you said, we're all guilty of, having a...
I'd say we're all human. I wouldn't even use the word... Did I use guilty?
No.
Right, I would use the word, because it's without judgment. We are human beings. Let's start being kind to ourselves first, and then we a visualization I use, and you use the word compassion, is compassion focused therapy. If something's really triggering you and you're reacting to it, just close your eyes and visualize your heart pumping, and that love pumping, for yourself, for humanity. And that can sometimes regulate you and bring you back. And just even doing that for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you can notice the change in energy.
I think as well, one of the, a couple of things there was one, sort of like emails and stuff when it comes to business, is not respond straight away, sleep on it. Another one is, me and Christelle often, and as we do with associates, surround yourself with people which you can have a rant with every now and then. So you can get on the phone and rant and get it all out, and then sort of talk around it. And I think as well that you sort of said, just let it, calmly. I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Actually, I'll come back to that point. But yeah, sort of
the wave, ride the wave, because that feeling will pass. And that's going back to you saying about emails. It doesn't have to be sent straight away. I sometimes write about, I've got 10 versions of that same email, and I find it quite almost amusing from the first one I've written, and then to the fifth, 4 or 5 days later, that version. It's like this whole emotional journey.
Yeah.
I have someone proof. I've done this to you, haven't I, Karen? I said, could you just proofread this and then help me calm it down if I'm not being too blunt here, but I've really got a lot to say and I just want to make sure it comes through. So yeah, like you said, associates, I think that's really quite key. This is all amazing. I'm just checking the time because we've got to wrap up, but this has been so informative. I feel like, a better way of approaching how we communicate and a healthier way to have conversations. And please speak up. Like, if anything, it's like now is not the time to be quiet or to let things slide. It always has a ripple effect. And, some amazing quotes about how you're complicit to, things happening if you keep quiet, if you don't speak out, what the injustice is, the unfairness is. You have to have those difficult conversations, but you can do it in a way that is impactful, can create positive change, like you were saying, Karen, just by speaking up and being respectful. And I think that's it. It's that respect, that compassion of going, okay, what truth is in what that person's saying or what I'm saying, or if it's triggering me, why is that? What's then that within myself that is triggering that I perhaps don't like or I'm reacting to? But I love what you do, Yasmin. Karen and I were just like, oh, absolutely perfect timing to have
definitely
to talk about this. And just follow the website, I imagine, for Let's Stop Shouting.
It's letsstopshouting.com, and it's got one S between the stop shout. Let's stop shouting.com. And I just want to say there, I know a lot of people don't like to speak up, because they may feel intimidated, they don't want to rock the boat. But also, if you think about it, by you staying quiet, you don't give other people the opportunity to grow and learn also. I think that's really important, that, to share what we know.
Beautiful.
Definitely. Oh, thank you.
Great chat. I loved it. Thank you so much for joining us, for watching. Please leave a note in the comment. We'll be sharing this on social as well, so don't forget to put notes in the comment or tag in Yasmin as well. Be sure to follow her. Follow Let's Stop Shouting Day. Let's get this going.
Thank you.
Conversations.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys.
That's all right. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to be notified of any shows that are coming up. We're also on LinkedIn. Join our page so you can see the information there. We also have all the contact details below on these show notes. So thank you very much, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.